our website your presentation with the translation of the presentation. So the floor is yours, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Sophia. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to run this session today. I hope you can understand me well enough. I'll try to speak slowly and clearly for you all. I'm going to present for around 45 minutes, and then there will be 15 minutes for questions at the end. So please do feel free to type questions into the chat as we go along. So let's begin. I should have asked, can you see the slides? Sophia, can you see the slides okay?
Yeah, we see you, we hear you, and slide also visible.
Great. So I think you introduced me already, but just a quick overview of me. So I'm Lucy Benison Chapman, and I have a PhD in archaeology from the University of Liverpool in the UK. And I worked on archaeological excavations in the Middle East and Turkey for around 18 years or so. I've worked as a university lecturer in Liverpool, in the Middle East. I spent some time in Syria and Jordan, also at a university on the Black Sea in Turkey, and then finally in the Netherlands, which is where I've stopped and still am now. I've published a number of journal articles and book chapters, and as a result of my postdoc at Leiden University in the Netherlands, edited a book as well. I've worked at Elsevier for just over 3 years, and initially I worked here part-time alongside working as a lecturer at Leiden University. The journal has grown immensely in the time that I've been at Elsevier, so now we are a team of 3, soon to be 4 editors working on the journal Social Sciences and Humanities Open. So I'm going to speak from the point of view of the requirements of our journal, which is an open access, multidisciplinary journal, which aims to diversify the publishing process. And we invite specifically early career researchers, first-time authors, and authors from underrepresented geographical regions, so authors not from the traditional areas that dominate the academic literature, so outside of Western Europe and the US. And I am very honored to have been invited to speak to you today. So I'm going to cover quite a lot of things in today's session. It's aimed at junior researchers and first-time authors, so that's why it's so comprehensive, but I hope it can be of use to academics at all levels. And I'm going to walk you through the entire process from how to find a journal, explaining what open access is, all the way through to what happens after you've submitted, how to handle peer review, and also ethical issues. We'll finish off with a Q&A. And then at the end of these slides, there are some useful resources which I've put in there. So you'll be able to follow the links at the end of this when you download it from your website. So the first thing, how to find the journal. You're all here presumably because you want to know how to successfully publish in an Elsevier journal. And the first step is to decide which one of the many thousands of journals Elsevier offers to submit to. Crucially, you should think about this before you finish your research and definitely before you start writing up. The first thing to consider is the journal type in terms of the financial model, be it subscription, open access, or hybrid. And this is important for you as an author because open access is free to read, but you as the author, your institution or your funder will need to pay an article processing charge. And then with the subscription model, you need to pay to read this. So it's only really available to read for people that have access to an academic library, but it's free to publish in. And often your university, your institute, or your funder will have requirements as to which type of model you should publish in. Gold open access is becoming the standard. part of the broader open science and open academia. If you publish in a gold open access journal, this leaves a free and permanent record for everyone to access. So just anybody sitting at home can access and read your article for free. Elsevier primarily offers gold and green open access routes. Importantly for you, Elsevier is currently waiving the article processing charge, or APC, for articles submitted to gold open access journals where the corresponding author has a Ukrainian affiliation. This is done automatically, and this will be communicated clearly to the corresponding author during the publication process. So once you've decided whether you will publish in a subscription or gold open access, you then need to find the right journal within that option in terms of the subject focus and the study type. So in order to do this, you should first define your broad subject or discipline, for example, history, and then what the subdiscipline is, so the history of Ukraine, and maybe even more specifically, for example, the history of Ukrainian clothing. And then you can look, also consider the type of article you want to write. So are you planning on writing a book review, a review article, a case report, short communication, or the standard full-length research article? Once you have these two things defined, you can then start searching for appropriate journals and then make a long list. So in order to do this, to narrow down your options, you should look at the journals that you usually use when you're researching yourself, when you're writing your essays, or that you're going to use to write up the article. What types of journals do you use in your teaching? It's also useful to ask colleagues, peers, or supervisors for their recommendations on where to publish your proposed study. Then also use the Elsevier Journal Finder. You can filter all of the different options, and you do need to scrutinize the results of this. Once you've done this, you can draw up a short list of potential journals to approach. So think of maybe 5 to 10 options. And then I advise that you research each one individually and carefully, taking notes and using the journal's homepage as listed on Scopus. So as you're doing this, you should be asking yourself a number of questions. So you can look at the About journal, and it will tell you what kind of articles the editor wants to publish. Also, then, if you look at the full aims and scope, this will detail the journals, what they want to publish in a lot more detail. And then go to the guide for authors. There'll be lots of information there. And importantly, you need to look at what article types they accept, because not all journals will publish all article types. Also look at the word counts. Some journals will want shorter articles of maximum 5,000 words. Others will accept 8 or 10. And then also look at any other journal-specific requirements and policies. Also worth looking at is the journal metrics, which will be shown on the journal homepage, top right. And then if you go into the menu, there's much more information about who works for the journal. And this can also be very informative for you choosing. So look to see who the editor-in-chief is, who the subject or associate editors are, and who is on the board. So are these names that you're familiar with? Are these people's specializations fitting with your research? If yes, then this might be the journal for you. In terms of also look at the special issues, because most journals will run special issues. So maybe in the past or currently there's a special issue open, which matches your field of research. And then that's another indicator that this is a right journal for you. And in terms of metrics, these are more important for some fields and some universities than others. So if they are important for you, you'll know what to look for. But if you don't know what they mean, if they're not important for you, just have a look at the numbers and be aware of them. These indicate how reputable a journal is and where it sits in terms of the international research landscape. So you should aim high, but do also be realistic. And once you have made your shortlist and with the details of each journal, then you should rank these in order of which journal you want to submit to first. Remember that you can't submit to more than one journal at a time, and this goes across publishers. So you should pick the one that you want to submit to first, submit there, wait to hear a decision, and if you're not successful there, then you can work your way down your list. So once you have the list of journals that you want to submit to, having a look and a real think at the points on the slide before writing will save time and minimize the risk of desk rejection later down the road. So first of all, have a good check of the guide for authors downloaded if you can, or if not, it's useful to copy and paste it into Word or print it off so that you can make notes around there. So you need to decide on your article type and follow the direct instructions given with regards to all aspects. And remember that each journal will have different rules. So a full-length article in SSHO, for example, will not have the same stipulations as a full-length article in a different journal. So make sure each time to fully look at this and note the word length and so on. Are there any ethical restrictions? Did you do a survey? Did you have participants? If so, then you need to look at these and make sure that you follow these before you start the research. Another key element to decide on is your authorship list, the roles that each person will fulfill if it's a multi-authored article, and the order of authorship when you submit. These things can't be changed once you've made the submission. So once you've got all of these basic elements in place, you then need to think about how you're going to write up your research. So think about who you're writing for and why. In terms of the journal readership, is this a specialized journal or not? So if the journal is the Journal of Ukrainian History, then people are gonna hopefully have a basic overview of Ukrainian history, and you won't need to go into a lot of detail. If you're submitting to, for example, Social Sciences and Humanities Open, well, we have a very broad readership, so you will need to explain the basics briefly in your introduction. So in order to know how much background context you're going to need to include, have a look, think of the journal's title, but also have a look at the aims and scope again, and also have a look at articles recently published. And there you can see the kind of background detail or not that you're going to need to include. Then you can make a plan or an outline of your article. Again, do this in conjunction with the journal stipulations. So do you need highlights? If so, these are actually useful to write at the beginning because it's going to give you a broad outline of your work. So journals where they have highlights, they'll ask for 3 to 5 bullet points of around 85 characters. So it's actually very short, and it's just like a very short kind of headline style bullet point, which really is to grab the audience's, or the reader's attention and to get them to read more. So in a way, it's kind of like the abstract and bullet points. Consider the word count of the article overall and also your abstract word count if there is one. Decide if you're going to include illustrations, and if so, approximately how many. So this includes figures, which can be photographs, drawings, line drawings, or charts, and also tables. Consider the style of referencing. This is also useful to know before you start writing up. So if the journal does have a specific style of referencing, it's useful to just use this from the beginning rather than using the style you normally use and then having to change it. Some journals are very strict on the use of headings or not, and some will give you actually a list of specific subheadings which you should use. Others will not want you to use subheadings at all. So again, knowing this before you start writing is very useful. And then the final thing is, should the manuscript be anonymized or not? So for most humanities and social sciences, they'll follow a double anonymized review process. So this means that you won't know who the peer reviewers are, and the reviewers won't know who the author is either. And so in terms of your writing style, again, this is useful to know if you need to refer to your previous study or you need to cite yourself. Well, you can write in a way that it's not obvious it's your work, or otherwise you anonymize them from the beginning, because again, it's harder to do this once you've already started writing. So once you have got all of these details ironed out, how to structure your article. So this is a common structure for an academic article. And surprisingly, people get this wrong very often in my journal. So on the first page, you'll be asked to upload a title page, but then the actual manuscript file, you do need to put your title, abstract, and keywords again. And then the main body text, this is the introduction to the conclusion. Often those will be subdivided as written out here and numbered. And then this will be followed by your references. Some journals will ask you to call this list of references or bibliography. In my journal, we call this references. And then the illustrations, you either put these at the end or you can place them within the main text. Follow the journal's guide for authors for your article type. In terms of actually what you write for each element of these, the abstract should be an overview of the entire piece. Sometimes people just copy and paste the opening of the introduction. This is not correct. We want to know your entire piece, including your methodology and your conclusions in your abstract. And this should be an overview, so accessible to non-specialists. Be aware of the international readership, if that's the scope of your journal, before you write this up. And another element which is crucial is your literature review section. So this should summarize past research on your topic and relevant adjacent topics. Key here is to use your own words. Don't just word for word write what other people say. And also make sure that you cite well, including page numbers for your literature review. You don't want to just say, Smith et al. Say this, and then kind of word for word go over each person, but it's better if you do it thematically, and you can bring in a range of different people's ideas in relevant thematic paragraphs within your literature review. Also, you should include recent publications as well as the main players in common debates. Sometimes we see people and they have researched well, but they haven't included anything in the last maybe 20 years or so. So make sure you include up-to-date literature. Your methodology needs to be detailed. So don't just put 1 or 2 lines, but we need to know what you did inside out. Research should be replicable. So if you don't tell us in detail what you've done and why, that is not the case. So sometimes we do see people where they don't put a method section at all, or they just put 1 or 2 lines. That's likely to be rejected. So include detail. If you need to include tables here, that is fine as well. Likewise, your research aims and research questions, these should be clear. They should be mentioned in the introduction, but then they should be presented in much more detail in the methodology. And crucially, when you get to your discussion, you need to then go back to the research questions and make sure that you address them one by one. The language that you use is important. You might have an amazing original piece of research with novel questions and insightful results, but you need to be able to communicate those to the audience. So don't make assumptions that the readers know everything you've done. They know why, that they are familiar with the ins and outs of your research topic. Be clear and concise, and remember that you're writing not only for people within your immediate field, but you're writing for other specialists in subfields and a broader international audience of academics from various fields if it's open access. So be sure to explain the key concepts and theories. In terms of sentences, keep these short, direct, and factual. Keep abbreviations to a minimum, as it makes work really hard to read if every term you use is abbreviated, and the readers have to keep going back to your list of abbreviations to understand what you're talking about. Useful paragraphs, and there should be 3 to 5 sentences per paragraphs with a beginning, middle, and end, and try to stick to 1 point per paragraph. So again, the work and the argument is easy to follow. Now, we understand that English is the language of communication in academia currently, and of course, this is not the first language of most of our authors, in fact. And so your English does not need to be perfect and polished, but it needs to be clear and understandable and free from errors. The Elsevier Researcher Academy is a very useful resource if you are new to academic publishing, because it has many tutorials, webinars, and other useful resources to help you to not only plan your article, but also to explain how to write, what makes a good conclusion, how to write your methodology, and so on. Referencing is one thing which often people say is tricky, or they dread getting to. It doesn't need to be difficult. The key thing is to follow one style correctly and consistently. So you should check before you start writing what style the journal that you're submitting to needs and follow those directions. So some will have a house style. This means that they will tell you you must use APA 6th edition, and they will not look at your work unless it follows that. Other Elsevier journals will follow your paper your way, which means you can use any style you want, and only if your work is accepted, then they will tell you, right, okay, now our house style is Chicago, so convert it to that. So check that first of all, and I suggest that if they have a house style, you use that from the beginning rather than converting later down the line. The your paper your way is useful. For example, if you submit your work somewhere following their house style, it's rejected and you want to submit it to a different journal, and then they have a different house style. But if you're not sure, then go with that house style to start. And there are very many useful links for the different referencing styles. So I suggest that you download those. They have handy kind of PDF guides at a glance. Print one off, put it next to your desk, and follow that. And then once you've finished writing up your article, another place where people fall down is they edit, they cut things out, they add things in, and then they don't go back and cross-reference. So every source that you cite in text should be in your list of references, and vice versa. If you're using a citation software, these can be very helpful, but they are prone to mistakes in the formatting. And so if you use one of these, it doesn't mean you don't need to check everything at the end. Sometimes they're customizable in terms of the in-text citations, so make sure they are the style that you need. Even if you've set the software to that style, you need to make sure they're displaying correctly, and also check each reference list entry at the end. Sometimes it puts parts in all capitals for unknown reason, so you'll need to manually change these. Now, once you've got your initial draft, yes, celebrate you've done well, but there's still a lot more work to do. The main thing is that you need to check and double check and proofread everything. By all parts, I mean also check the text in your tables, check the captions, and check the citations and reference list. Often I'll see people just check the main text, but there's errors elsewhere. Now, if you've got co-authors, use your co-authors, use your supervisors, use your peers. You won't spot your own mistakes when you've spent months writing and slaving over one article. So share it with other people and ask them to point out the mistakes that you've made. It's also useful to ask somebody from outside of your immediate field. This can be a friend, family member, doesn't need to be someone from academia, because they'll also spot mistakes, or maybe there's some things which they make sense to you because you know the ins and outs of the topic, but actually they don't make sense to anyone else. Also, you should make sure that every co-author, if it's a co-authored paper, that they have a copy of this final, the final version which you're going to submit before you submit it, so that later down the line there can be no arguments over, well, I didn't agree to that, I didn't know that's the one you submitted. Make sure everyone has it, they agree, okay, we're going to submit this. So once you've done that, you are ready to go into editorial manager. The key thing here is that it takes time. Often first-time authors, myself included, you think, okay, I've got a Word file, I just drag and drop it, put my name, that's it. It actually takes quite a lot of time, so set aside a good 2 hours and prepare to even have to save and come back the next day to finish things off. You'll need to register and make an account in Editorial Manager, and right now each Elsevier journal, they all use Editorial Manager, but it's a different account for each journal. So don't assume, well, I submitted to a journal last year, so I'll use the same one. It's a different account. So remember which email address you use. Make a note of the email address and the login or the password that you use. And also remember to keep checking your spam. You'll need to prepare in advance, so make sure that you've checked the guide for authors and you've noted all of the files needed, and that you've also got the details of each of the authors that have helped in the research. Now, each journal, again, will ask for different files, but the list here is the main files that you'll be asked for. So most will ask for a covering letter. Sometimes this is optional. By a covering letter, this should be addressed to the editor of the journal. So have a look, and every journal will say who the editor-in-chief is. So have a look and make sure this is addressed to the correct person. It's much better if you address it to somebody specifically rather than just to the editor. This looks like you didn't really take the time to even look into who you're submitting to. Put a date on the letter. And each time you revise or resubmit, you should update this letter, update the date and update the content. I won't go through what you write on it because you'll have these slides, but this should introduce yourself, your research, and be signed by you as the corresponding author. You'll almost always be asked for a title page file. This should have the name, the email address, and the institutional address of each author. And also will ask for a few declarations, namely use of AI statement, funding statement. And again, you'll be prompted within Editorial Manager as to exactly what you should put on here. There'll be a declaration of completing interest file, which you can generate from a link that you're given. Sometimes highlights, sometimes a graphical abstract, and sometimes you will have appendices which will be uploaded separately under supplementary material. Sometimes you'll ask for a list of potential reviewers. So it's good to have a think of that in advance, speak to your supervisor, to your co-authors, also opposed reviewers. So if there's somebody that you've come across that you really just clash, you have totally differing ideas, you've met them at a conference, they don't like your work, you don't like theirs, you can put them as an opposed reviewer because you know they're going to suggest that your work is rejected. So you can list them, give the reason why, and then us as the editor will know to avoid them. For the potential reviewers, these should be people that you don't know personally. They can't be at your institution. They can't be somebody you've published with in the last 5 years. They can't be somebody that you've taught or that has taught you. So the potential reviewers, I mean, they must be somebody who is actively working as an academic, or they're retired, but they are still researching. And they should be somebody who is an expert in your field. When you actually log into Editorial Manager, I think the main pitfall that people come across is that they don't read the prompts. It is a bit of an old-fashioned system, I admit, but all of the info is there. So read this carefully, and at the bottom of each page, there will be a save option. So don't panic that you need to rush through and submit. Save as you go along and read all of the prompts. You see the list here, there's a lot of different elements. That's why I said allow at least 2 hours. Some of these will automatically be generated, but you need to check each one is correct. So the first thing will be the article type, and this will be full-length research article, book review, case report, short communication, or if you're submitting to a special issue, they'll be listed there as well. Your article title, this is the title of your manuscript. And then the author names, you need to enter these correctly because, and also state who is author 1, who is author 2, author 3, and so on. Next to that, you'll be asked what role each author performed. When you've got to the end of the process, you'll be asked to drag and drop each file in. And again, authors often go wrong here. It is quite easy if you pay attention. So the item is the first thing here. So you see on the list here, you've got declaration of interest statement. The description, you type this in yourself, so it should basically be the same as the item. Although if you've got figures, you can then put figure 1, figure 2, figure 3. The file name, don't put your name in there. This should just be manuscript figure or something like this. And actually the description, the bit you type yourself, this will be displayed on the PDF. So make sure this is in English and that this tells the reader what the file is. Sometimes people write this in their own language. I have to send it back, or sometimes people just leave the default and every single file is manuscript, which is obviously not right. When you've dragged every file in, you then need to reorder them, and you see the order on the left. You put 1, 2, 3. You put the number against the file of what order number you want it to be, update, and then follow through next, and it will generate a PDF. Download that, open it, and check everything is correct, that the files are in the right order, that the file name displayed on the top is correct. And if there's errors, it's not too late. You simply just go back to this page, delete the file, put the new file in, change the order, and make the PDF again. So you can download the final version, and you should, again, save that yourself, but also share it with your co-authors. Now, I realize the time is running away with us. So common mistakes or how to avoid desk rejection, obviously something everyone wants to do. So all of these things on the slide, these are the main reasons for desk rejection, and these are actually all very avoidable. These are all just a case of authors not taking the time to really check, double check, and correct things before submitting. So obviously names on the file called manuscript without author names or anonymous manuscript is a no-no. So again, you should check that if you do need to give an anonymous file, that there are no author names on there. Also, we don't then want you to put a funding statement saying, I, Lucy Benison Chapman, thank the University of Liverpool for funding me. Don't put the name of your institute, your supervisor. Don't put a credit author statement, even with initials, because if somebody in your field sees that, they're going to know from your initials. If I put, Archaeology of Neolithic Turkey, LBC, everyone who works in Neolithic Turkey knows that's me. So avoid everything. Also, word count, stick to it. Have a look in the guide for authors and see if it includes the reference list or not, if it includes tables and illustrations or not. If they don't say, assume it does, assume it's everything on the manuscript file. Sometimes we get people submitting 1,000 words only or 20,000 words when they're asked for 8. You'll be desk rejected if you do that. Plagiarism is obviously a no-no. I'll go over that in a few slides' time. Then there's also often missing or incorrect declarations. If you're not sure what any declaration you're asked for means, have a look on the Elsevier website. There is a Elsevier author section, and it details all of the ethical considerations there. Don't look at the website for another journal. People often do that. Look at the guide for authors of the journal you're submitting to, or the Elsevier Author Hub, to see what a funding statement is, what a declaration of the use of AI is, what you should put in your acknowledgements, and so on. And lastly, incorrect or inconsistent authorship information. So you'll be asked to put the author details on the title page, but also you need to put those within the editorial manager submission system as well. And if you put different authors or a different order of names, if you put the last name into the box for the first name, or you put a different order of authors, you're likely to get desk rejected then. So other common mistakes which take a bit more time and thinking is the writing style. So as I said before, the writing style is important, and especially the title, abstract, and keywords. The title and the abstract are what the editors send to potential peer reviewers. So if the title is unclear, it's full of abbreviations, or just simply doesn't make sense, it's likely to be desk rejected, because no reviewer is going to agree to review if the title doesn't make sense. So either the editor will reject it immediately, or they won't be able to find any reviewers. And the same goes for the abstract. So I already explained how you should craft your abstract, but make sure it's clear, make sure you have this proofread, and make sure the English is free from errors at this stage. Specifically, the abstract should be polished. And then these elements are also very important for search engines in the digital age that we live in now. So again, the title should include keywords so that your work is going to come up when people search for relevant work. Now, the writing needs to be clear. So you really need to pick your subject, pick your focus, pick your research question, and don't try to do too much in one article. We see this specifically when people want to publish up their master's thesis or their PhD. You know, a thesis is way longer than a research article. So most of the time you are not going to be able to get your entire thesis into one article. So take one element of it, take one part of the thesis, take one chapter of the thesis, or just one section of the research, and work this into an article. You can always write a second or a third later down the line. Make sure that you have clear aims and research questions, and that you answer these questions. So having a poor discussion or no discussion at all is going to increase your chance of desk rejection. And then, as I showed near the beginning, make sure that you've got the main elements needed. You'll be surprised how many people submit and there's no conclusion, or there's no methodology, there's no literature review. You need to have all of these basic elements in your article. Then lastly, most Elsevier journals now don't have very detailed stipulations on like what type of font you should use, what size font and style, and so on. But make sure it's clear. If the line spacing is really so small that everything is squished together, if you've got no margins, if you've got tables and figures embedded in the text, but there's no spacing around them, and you can't work out what is a caption and what is the actual main text, it just makes it very hard to read. Likewise, if there's a header for every sentence, or there's no headers at all, it can make the work hard to read. So make the job as easy as possible for your editor and the reviewers. And also, we see so often just silly mistakes, which are just sloppy table and figure numbering errors. First, you open with figure 2, and then you go back to figure 1, or there's 2 figure 2s. And this is because you edit and switch things around, and then you haven't proofread. So make sure the tables are numbered 1, 2, 3, and so on. Figures the same. that the illustrations are not blurry, they are not stretched, they are up the right way, and at the very least that you use the word spell checker. Now, ethical considerations. We see a lot of problems in terms of the authorship, so who can be named as an author. So I advise you again to look at the Elsevier author guide and read the rules of authorship. If somebody has just advised but hasn't actually made a substantial intellectual contribution, you should thank them in your acknowledgements, but they shouldn't be an author. Crucially, the author list and the order of authors should not be changed once the manuscript has been submitted, and definitely not once it's in review. If you do this, again, you're likely to actually be desk rejected because it looks suspicious to us. Decide who is the first author and stick to that. Likewise, the corresponding author. The corresponding author is a person who we will communicate with and who will be named, if the work is published, as the person to reach out to. It can be anyone. We can't have two corresponding authors for most journals. We suggest that this person has got an academic email address and isn't planning on moving job soon, because their email address will be published with the article. So often it's better to have somebody not junior, because junior academics move a lot. Lastly, the don'ts of the authorship. So make sure everyone is included. Don't take somebody else's work and think, well, they said I can use it, but I'm not going to name them. And also, gift authorship is not ethical, so you can't just name somebody as an author as a favor. Plagiarism, again, a very common reason for desk rejection. So all manuscripts are checked for this upon submission. And we check for this in quite a sophisticated way. We don't just look at the percentage and reject at a certain number. We look in detail. So if your work has been published before, that's self-plagiarism. If your thesis is available online through your university, that doesn't count as a publication, that's fine. We will see that, but you can say in your covering letter, you know, this research is based on my thesis, which is available at my university website here. That can help, but we do look at all of the details. If you think there might be a problem, it is worth putting this in the covering letter. For example, if you've presented this paper at a conference and the conference abstract is online, but the work was not published, there was no conference proceedings, no conference book, it helps if you tell us that. But the main thing is that you use your own original words. If you want to quote somebody directly, make sure that you use quotation marks and that you put a full citation, including the page number. So there's links here which explain these elements in more detail, and make sure you consult these in your own time. I think one of the main problems that people face is they take notes. And when you take notes, you copy somebody's ideas word for word, but you don't cite them because you're just making notes. And then when you come to write up, you think that's your own words and they're not. So when you're taking notes, make sure that you put quotation marks around if you are just copying word for word. The ethics statement. This is relevant to any work which involves people. So often we'll see people saying not applicable, or I didn't run any clinical trials, I didn't do any experiments on people, so I don't need one. If you've gone to a classroom and observed teachers or children, if you've given questionnaires to people, even just questionnaires online, then most journals will ask you for an ethics statement, and it depends on the journal what they want from you. A lot will want you to go to your institutional review board or ethics board at your university and get approval or an exemption. You will need to have informed your participants of the purpose of the research, their rights, and they must have consented to it. So always check with your institution, any national guidelines and the journal's guide for authors, and make sure that you write something for the ethics statement as to what you've done and how. If you did get an exemption or an approval, put the number there, and you can also attach the letter under ethics statement file option as well. If you've given too much information, you'll be told. It's better than not giving enough. You'll see this as a guidelines on social sciences and humanities open. Okay, and then the last thing is the responsible use of generative AI. So Elsevier has an overall policy on the responsible use of AI for journal article authors, and this page is updated regularly. So again, I suggest that you check there and see what the rules and your responsibilities are for the use of this. So Elsevier does recognize the potential use of this, but it needs to be used responsibly and it needs to be always declared. We see that many researchers have questions about this. Many researchers want to use it, or they do use it, but they're really not sure what to do. Of course, this technology can be used for good, but it does have many problems as well. As you see here, there's concerns about accuracy, reliability. It does make up references. There is bias in the training because it just uses information out there which is already biased. And so the overall rule is that you can use it to assist your writing, to basically like as a spell checker or a proofreader, but you shouldn't use it to generate ideas, and ultimately you take responsibility for what you published. So it shouldn't write for you. And this also includes image generation. So you should not use AI to make images for you. The submission journey. When you submit an article to a journal, it's first screened by the editorial team, and then you'll get a decision, either a rejection or returned to you for minor improvements. Maybe you've left your name on there somewhere. Maybe you haven't put headings and you should have. And then either it's rejected or it's sent to a specialist editor for a closer assessment, and then hopefully for peer review. When it goes to peer review, the reviewers will send their comments in to the editor. We will look at these, and then we use them to guide our suggestions. So generally, we will either tell you, okay, the reviewers actually were very negative and I agree with them, so we have to reject. Very rarely is it accepted as it is. Mostly you'll be assigned revisions, and there will be either minor or major revisions. If you get revisions, you are, this is the most likely outcome. You'll be invited to rewrite the work, and you should address each comment one by one. And when you resubmit, you'll resubmit a file called response to reviewers. And there you list reviewer 1, question 1, and you say what their comments were and whether you have incorporated these or whether you disagree and why. So you do that for each comment, and this can be quite time consuming, but you should do this carefully. And often we see authors are a bit upset that they get major revisions, but take time, go through them. If you get revisions, it means the editor actually does see promise in your work. So even if they're major, even if it's a total rewrite, take time to do this and resubmit carefully. Often work needs 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds of revisions, but ultimately, yeah, getting revisions is a good thing. Finally, if your work is accepted, that's great. You'll get proofs. You need to check them. You can't make any major changes here, but you can correct any typos. If there's any errors, you can fix those. You can add in self-citations or any information that you anonymized. And if the work was rejected, of course, you'll be upset, but remember that this is very common. Even the best academics get desk rejected commonly. And this is between 40 and 80% of all submissions, depending on the journal. So if you get rejected, don't get annoyed, don't get upset, just set the work aside for a few days and then come back and have a look at the letter from the editor and the reviewer's reports in detail and try to understand why. Generally, they will give you constructive criticism so that you can actually take their comments, rework the piece, and submit it elsewhere. So be self-critical. Then you go back to your list of journals to approach, and you can go to the next one on the list, rewrite, and submit again. Now we are only 8 minutes left, so I'm going to finish it there and ask for questions. Sophia, back to you. I'm not sure why you can't speak, Sophia. That's very odd. Let me see if I can find your name in the list and enable you to. I don't think I can.
I'm sorry. I'm already with you. Sorry. technical. So, if you have any question in Ukrainian, якщо у вас є якісь питання, то, будь ласка, задавайте їх в чаті, і пані Люсі відповість. Я, якщо буде це українською, спробую перевести. Dear Lucy, the question in the chat, it's appropriate to use artificial intelligence technology when formulating a manuscript. In what areas is it permitted?
Yeah, you can use it to format the manuscript because this is just the layout, so that's fine. The things that you can't do is to get it to write it for you. So, I mean, you could literally put a prompt saying, write me an academic article about publishing in Ukraine, and it would write something. But obviously, this is none of your ideas. So what you can do is you can write a paragraph, and then you can ask it to check the spelling, check the typos, make it sound more professional. That is allowed, but you can also maybe like use it to generate some ideas to start you off with. So you could say, you know, what are the most common topics in, I don't know, the study of Ukrainian dress 100 years ago. And then you go away and research those topics that it gives you. So you can use it to give you some ideas, and you can use it to polish your writing, but you can't use it to do the work for you, if that makes sense. On the Elsevier website, which the link is in the slides, which you'll get, there's a whole full page about this, responsible AI principles, and it explains everything, and also will give examples. And then when you submit, you should write a use of AI statement, and there's also examples there. So you can say, I didn't use AI at all, or I used, for example, Grammarly to polish the language.
Okay, thank you. You already answered, yes? Yes?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
I see another question about the payment. So again, this is on the slides. Let me maybe just share the slides again. And here we go. So there's a whole page on the Elsevier website for Ukrainian academics. And here it lists everything which Elsevier is doing to help Ukrainians right now affected by the war. There is a page about the funding available, and specifically, if the corresponding author is at a university or based at an institute in the Ukraine, you don't need to physically be there. But if you're registered as a PhD candidate, or if you're a lecturer at a university in the Ukraine, when you submit the work, then you will state that as your affiliation. And then the APC is waived totally, and that will happen automatically. Now, if it's a co-authored article, or perhaps you're Ukrainian, but you got offered a position in the Netherlands, for example, then you need to look at any funding which is available to you at your institution. So say if you're Ukrainian, but you get offered a teaching position at a Dutch university, well, there is a Dutch system in place, which means your library covers the APCs for you. So it really depends on your situation itself. So yeah, easiest thing is if the corresponding author is affiliated to a Ukrainian institute, there's nothing to pay. If your affiliation is another country, then you check with your university and your library. There's these two schemes on the slide that I'm sharing now. So if you're Ukrainian, but you have moved to a university in another country, which does not have an agreement with Elsevier and is a low or middle income country, then there are also discounts for you. So there's the Research for Life scheme and the geographical pricing scheme, and these offer a full waiver or a reduction according to the income level of the country you're in. Importantly, you'll always get the best offer. So I don't know, say if you move to a university in Turkey, which would be a middle income country, but you are still affiliated with your Ukrainian university, you would get the Ukrainian deal. If you're in Turkey and you've given up your Ukrainian affiliation, then you would get the geographical pricing deal. So these will be done automatically. And then if you have any questions about that during the review process, you can always email the open access team at Elsevier, and they will be able to check for you.
Thank you very much for this answer. I have one small question. Which instrument to check artificial intelligence do you use? Because we have practice to use two instruments, and we have two different results. So
Yes.
what instrument do you use?
Overall, Elsevier does not have one instrument which they recommend because of exactly what you're saying. So right now there is no reliable tool to detect the use of AI. And so it's down to each individual editor to have a look at the manuscript and to assess it. So if there is this is why we ask you to declare. So if you declare you've used AI, fine. And you've used it just as a spell check, that's okay. Now, if you say you haven't used it at all, but then there are indicators in your manuscript which suggest to the editor, we think AI has been used actually, well, then the author has lied on submission. So this is already a red flag. And then the editor will take appropriate steps to look into it further using a variety of tools. And then, you know, if we think you've actually used AI to write it and you've declared that you haven't used it, then you'll be rejected because this is an ethical violation. Now, if you, most often actually, I see that people declare they've used it in the wrong way and they haven't read our guide. So commonly I've seen people, they say AI generated the images. Well, this is not allowed. This is clearly written on the Elsevier website. So then I have to reject. Or I can ask them to remove them. But mostly we would reject because if they've already done this, then maybe they have also violated the ethical rules elsewhere. That makes sense. But yeah, so it depends on the article and the kind of evidence we use. I mean, the most obvious thing is people leave in prompts, and then it's clear. I mean, you don't need any tools to detect that. They leave in the prompts from ChatGPT, and then the editor can see they've used it, they haven't declared they've used it, or they've declared they haven't used something. Yeah, then it's a violation, and you'd be surprised how often people do that. They leave in open brackets, which the AI tool makes for them. So yeah, then you'll get a ethical rejection.
Okay, thank you very much for this answer. Do you have, шановна аудиторія, чи маєте ви ще запитання якісь? Якщо будете мати запитання в процесі вашої діяльності, ви можете звертатися напряму за емейлом до пані Люсі. Вона лишить його на сторінках своєї презентації, тому можете безпосередньо потім звертатися. Але питання українською. The question in Ukrainian, but it's question for me. If there is in YouTube this webinar. Так, цей вебінар буде на YouTube. Буде посилання на нашому вебсайті ДНТБ. Там буде посилання, ну, власне, наш канал YouTube також називається, ви можете знайти за назвою Державна науково-технічна бібліотека, але в будь-якому випадку вже завтра буде на нашому сайті буде просто новина, де буде посилання на запис цього вебінару. Дякую. І пані Люсі якраз прикріпила ще семінари, які Elsevier робить для України. От якраз лінк. Тоді, якщо запитань наразі немає, тоді будемо завершувати. Дуже дякую всім, хто прийшов. Дуже дякую за запитання. Тоді слідкуйте за нашими новинами, буде інформація про вебінар. Dear Lucy, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for this presentation once again. So if we have some questions, so we will communicate with you. And the record of this webinar would be in our website of State Scientific Technical Library, and we will share with you this link also.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for joining, and thank you for hosting, Sophia. I've posted the Elsevier Ukraine link in the chat there, and then yeah, in the slides you will get all of the links for information, and there's also my email address if you have any specific questions about the journal that I work on. So thank you, everyone.
До побачення. Усім гарного дня.
Дякую, до побачення. Гарного дня.